Ever wish you could just walk into any negotiation, like buying a car or asking for a raise?
Or even just getting your kids to eat their vegetables.
Yeah.
With like the confidence of an FBI hostage negotiator.
Oh, totally.
Well, today we're going to dive deep
Oh,
into Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Is that going to be
He is a former lead international kidnapping negotiator for the FBI.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about the big leagues here.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to uncover the secrets
Yes.
that like anybody can use in everyday life.
Exactly. And we've got your notes right here.
Awesome.
And we're going to break down like the most valuable techniques.
Okay.
So you can start using them right away.
I love that.
What I find fascinating is how often people feel powerless in conversations.
Yeah.
And this book gives you the practical tools to shift that dynamic.
Okay.
It takes those battle-tested strategies from high-stakes hostage situations
Right.
and shows you how they apply to even the most ordinary scenarios.
It's like having a secret weapon for navigating anything life throws at you.
Absolutely.
One of the most surprising things I've found is how Voss flips the script on the whole idea of getting to yes. He actually says no is the more powerful word in negotiation.
It's counterintuitive, but it's incredibly liberating.
How so?
No gives the other person psychological safety and a sense of control,
Interesting.
which paradoxically makes them more open to working with you.
So instead of feeling pressured
Yeah.
or cornered,
Right.
they actually feel heard and respected.
Exactly.
It's like that classic example Voss gives about dealing with telemarketers.
Oh, yeah.
So instead of asking, do you have a few minutes to talk?
Which usually leads to an immediate no.
Right.
You try, is now a bad time to talk. You're giving them an easy out,
Right.
acknowledging their time is valuable.
Okay.
And surprisingly often, they'll actually engage with you.
That's so interesting. It's all about shifting the dynamic from like a confrontation to a conversation. Now, here's a technique that really stood out to me. Tactical empathy. This isn't about like feeling sorry for someone.
No.
It's about understanding their perspective
Right.
and using that understanding strategically
Yes.
to guide the conversation.
It's about seeing the world through their lens, understanding their motivations,
Okay.
their fears, their desires.
Mm.
And one of the most powerful tools for doing that is something Voss calls labeling.
Labeling, okay.
It's basically putting their emotions into words.
So like saying, it seems like you're frustrated with this situation.
Exactly. It's so simple, but so effective.
Why does that work?
It disarms negativity by acknowledging the other person's feelings.
Okay.
And it shows you're actively listening and trying to understand their point of view.
Gotcha.
It builds trust and rapport,
Right.
which are crucial for any successful negotiation.
So this isn't just theory.
No, not at all.
This actually works in these incredibly high-pressure situations. Voss tells this story in the book about spending 6 hours talking to fugitives through a door.
Yeah.
And by using labeling to acknowledge their fear
Right.
and build rapport,
Right.
he was actually able to get them to surrender peacefully.
It just shows how powerful a simple acknowledgement can be.
Wow.
It validates the other person's feelings and it takes the sting out of any potential conflict.
Okay, now we're getting to the really juicy stuff.
All right.
So Voss dives into how we can actually bend reality in our favor by using anchoring and framing techniques. He talks about how the human brain is heavily influenced by the first number thrown out in a negotiation.
That first number acts as an anchor.
Hmm.
It sets a reference point for everything that follows.
Interesting.
So even if the initial number seems outrageous,
Okay.
it subtly influences the other person's perception of what's possible.
So he shares a crazy anecdote from his FBI days
Yes.
about negotiating with kidnappers who were
Okay.
demanding $150,000.
It's a wild story.
And through these strategic delays
Right.
and carefully calibrated questions,
Yeah.
he managed to get them down to $7,500
Wow.
and a CD player.
It might sound crazy,
It does sound crazy.
but it illustrates the power of setting that initial anchor.
Okay.
Even if it seems ridiculous at first, you create a frame of reference that makes your actual offer seem much more reasonable by comparison.
So how do we apply this in everyday life?
Yeah, good question.
We're not exactly negotiating hostage situations here. Do you give an example?
Imagine you're trying to buy a used car.
Okay.
Instead of starting with a reasonable offer,
Right.
you could begin by saying something like, I wouldn't pay more than $5,000 for a car like this.
Even if you're willing to go higher.
Exactly.
That low number sets an anchor,
Yes.
and any subsequent offers will feel more palatable to the seller.
Precise.
It's fascinating how psychology plays such a huge role in negotiation. It's not just about logic and numbers. It's about understanding these subconscious biases that influence our decisions. And another key insight from Voss is the importance of giving the other person the illusion of control.
It's about making them think it was their idea all along.
Okay?
And the way to do this is through something Voss calls calibrated questions.
We've touched on those briefly.
Yeah.
What exactly are calibrated questions and how do they work?
They're open-ended questions
Okay.
designed to gently guide the other person towards your desired outcome without them even realizing it.
I see.
They often start with words like how or what.
Okay.
It subtly shifts the burden of problem solving onto them.
So instead of making demands
Right.
or arguing,
Exactly.
we ask questions that make them think
Yes.
and come to their own conclusions that just happen to align with our goals.
Exactly. Voss shares a great example of a doctor who
Cool.
wanted an unhappy patient to stay in a treatment program. Instead of arguing, the doctor simply asked, "What do you hope to accomplish by leaving?"
Interesting.
That question made the patient stop and reflect on their motivations,
I see.
ultimately leading them to realize the benefits of staying.
It's like using their own logic against them.
Yes.
Without them even realizing it. You're essentially planting a seed in their mind
Right.
and letting it grow organically.
And by giving them the illusion of control, you eliminate resistance and create a much more collaborative atmosphere.
Right, because it's not about manipulation.
No.
It's about guiding them towards a solution that benefits everyone involved.
Exactly.
This all circles back to the idea of understanding the other person's perspective. Voss calls it uncovering their religion, what they truly value, their motivations, their fears.
Right, it's about finding those hidden nuggets of information that can completely change the game.
He calls these crucial pieces of information black swans.
They might be hidden motivations, fears, constraints,
Okay.
or even just a misunderstanding of the situation.
And the key to uncovering them is through active listening
Yes.
and asking those strategically calibrated questions.
Exactly.
So we're not just passively listening.
No.
We're actively probing,
Right.
looking for those inconsistencies, those subtle cues that reveal their true motivations.
It's like becoming a negotiation detective.
In the book, Voss describes this tense situation involving a farmer threatening to blow up the National Mall.
Ah.
And it was by understanding his religious beliefs and the deeper reasons behind his actions
Right.
that negotiators were able to find common ground
Yeah.
and peacefully resolve the situation.
It's amazing how a single piece of information
Right,
can
right.
completely change the dynamic of a negotiation.
But how do we actually find those black swans in everyday conversations? What are some specific techniques we can use?
Well, that's what we're going to delve into next. We'll explore some practical techniques for uncovering those hidden treasures
Okay.
and using them to our advantage.
This is going to be good.
Stay tuned.
I'm definitely stayed tuned.
Welcome back.
We've been talking about these black swans in negotiation,
Right.
these unexpected pieces of information that can just totally change the game.
They really are like hidden treasures.
But how do we actually go about finding them? We talked a little bit about calibrated questions earlier.
Yeah.
Could you maybe elaborate a bit more on those?
So calibrated questions are the tools we use to gently pry open the vault
Okay.
and reveal those black swans. They're carefully crafted
Okay.
to nudge the other person into revealing more information than they intended.
Interesting.
Often these questions start with how or what,
Right.
prompting them to kind of take the lead in problem solving
Okay.
without even realizing they're doing your work for you.
It sounds like a bit of a Jedi mind trick.
Absolutely.
Can you give us an example?
In the book, Voss shares a story about a doctor who is trying to convince a disgruntled patient to stay in a treatment program
Okay.
instead of lecturing or arguing.
Right.
The doctor simply asked, "What do you hope to accomplish by leaving?" This seemingly innocuous question forced the patient to pause and really consider their motivations,
Okay.
eventually leading them to see the value in staying.
It's amazing how a simple, well-placed question can have such a profound impact.
It really can.
It seems like the key is to get them doing the heavy lifting,
Yeah.
the thinking,
Right.
without them ever feeling pressured
Exactly.
or manipulated.
You got it.
And this ties into another fascinating concept Voss introduces.
Okay.
The idea that sometimes that's right is a much more powerful goal in a negotiation than a simple yes.
Much more powerful.
It seems counterintuitive.
It does.
Don't we want them to agree with us to say yes?
A yes can be fleeting.
Okay.
It can be a polite dismissal, a way to end the conversation without true buy-in.
Right.
But That's right.
Okay.
Implies a deeper level of understanding.
God,
A genuine internalization of your point.
So they've actually, like, taken ownership
Yes,
of the idea.
making them far more likely to follow through.
It's like the difference between compliance
Yeah,
and genuine commitment.
exactly.
Voss uses this brilliant analogy
Okay,
to illustrate this point.
right.
He talks about coaching his son on the football field,
I remember this.
saying, "You're right."
Yeah.
Whenever his son made a mistake, was completely ineffective.
Because even though he was verbally agreeing,
Yeah.
he wasn't actually learning from his mistakes.
Right. So it was just words.
Exactly.
But when Voss shifted his approach,
Okay.
using those calibrated questions to guide his son towards the right conclusion,
Right.
and his son finally said, "That's right."
Mm,
That's when the real change,
Yeah.
the genuine learning took place.
it clicked.
I've been in so many meetings
Me too.
where everyone's nodding and saying yes,
Right.
but then nothing actually changes.
Yeah, it's all surface agreement.
Right.
Without real action.
So how do we elicit that powerful
Yeah.
instead of a hollow yes?
Voss suggests using summaries
Okay.
and paraphrases to reflect the other person's perspective,
Okay.
making sure you truly understand their concerns.
Gotcha.
And when you hit the mark and they respond with, "That's right,"
Yeah.
you've built a solid foundation of trust and understanding.
So it all circles back to that idea of tactical empathy.
Yes.
You're demonstrating a genuine understanding of their needs,
Right.
which makes them far more receptive to your ideas and suggestions.
Exactly. It's not about manipulating them.
Right.
It's about creating a collaborative environment
Okay.
where both parties feel heard and respected.
And this takes us back to the concept of bending reality
Okay.
through anchoring and framing.
Right. We talked about how that first number thrown out in a negotiation acts as an anchor.
Right.
It subtly influences the other person's perception of what's reasonable.
And I loves that story about how Voss used this technique to negotiate with kidnappers.
It is a powerful example of
Yeah.
how anchoring can work even in the most extreme situations.
But we can use this in everyday life as well. Like, think about negotiating your salary.
Right.
Instead of simply stating your desired number, you could start by mentioning a figure significantly higher,
Okay.
setting an anchor
Yes.
that makes your actual ask seem more reasonable.
Exactly. It's almost like creating a perceptual illusion.
Yeah.
You're shifting their frame of reference without them even realizing it.
But how do we do this without coming across as aggressive
Right.
or unreasonable?
Good question.
I remember Voss talking about using a late-night FM DJ voice.
That's an important point.
Okay.
The tone you use is crucial,
Right.
especially when you're setting a seemingly outrageous anchor.
Okay.
You want to sound calm, confident,
Mm-hmm.
even a bit soothing.
Okay.
Avoid any hint of confrontation or desperation.
It's about creating that psychological safety we talked about.
Exactly.
If they feel threatened or cornered, they'll immediately put up their defenses.
You want to foster an environment where they feel comfortable opening up,
Right.
sharing information, and exploring possibilities.
Mm.
And this might sound counterintuitive,
Oh,
but
oh.
Voss actually encourages us to get the other person to say no early on in the negotiation.
That does seem strange.
It
Are we supposed to be striving for a yes?
There's a surprising psychological power to no.
Okay.
When someone says no, they feel a sense of control.
Hmm.
Like they're setting boundaries and asserting their autonomy.
So it's about empowering them,
Yes.
even if it seems like they're rejecting our ideas initially.
Precisely. And by understanding what they're not willing to do,
Okay.
we gain valuable insights into their priorities and motivations.
Voss gives that brilliant example of dealing with telemarketers.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of asking, do you have a few minutes to talk?
Which almost guarantees a quick no.
Right.
He suggests trying is now a bad time to talk.
It's a subtle shift,
It is.
but it frames the question in a way that gives them the illusion of control
Right.
while still keeping the door open for conversation.
And by acknowledging their right to say no, you build rapport and establish a more collaborative dynamic.
It's like you're giving them a safe space to express their boundaries,
Exactly.
which paradoxically makes them more likely to engage with you.
It's fascinating
It is fascinating.
how these seemingly small tweaks in language
Right.
can have such a profound impact on the entire negotiation.
It's all about understanding the subtle psychology at play.
Yes. It's not about manipulation.
Right.
It's about communication,
Okay.
empathy,
Hmm.
and creating a win-win scenario
Right.
where both parties feel understood and respected.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the power of no to bending reality
Right.
and uncovering those elusive black swans.
Yeah, before we jump into the final set of techniques,
Okay.
let's pause for a moment.
Right.
What's resonating with you the most so far?
I think for me, it's the reminder that negotiation is about so much more than just like haggling over prices or contracts.
Right.
It's about human connection, understanding and finding creative solutions that work for everyone involved.
I completely agree.
And I'm already starting to see how I can apply these techniques in my own life, not just in formal negotiations, but in everyday interactions as well.
I love that.
Whether it's talking to my kids about chores
Yeah.
or collaborating with colleagues on a project,
Right.
these principles can help us navigate those conversations with more confidence
Absolutely.
and achieve better outcomes.
It's about empowering ourselves to approach any interaction with a sense of calm,
Okay.
clarity, and purpose.
I like that.
And that's what we're going to delve into next.
Aye.
We'll explore some specific techniques and strategies that you can start using today
Okay.
to become a more effective negotiator in all aspects of your life.
This is going to be good.
Stay tuned.
All right, so welcome back.
To our deep dive into Never Split the Difference.
We've been exploring this power of no
Right.
and the art of bending reality and uncovering those game-changing black swans. But now it's time to get down to like the brass tacks.
Okay.
How do we actually put all this into practice when we're like sitting across the table from someone?
That's where Voss introduces this powerful system called the Ackerman model.
Ackerman model.
It's a structured approach
Okay.
to making offers and counteroffers that takes the emotion out of the equation
Okay.
and gives you a clear roadmap to follow.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this Ackerman model.
So the Ackerman model is all about precision
Okay.
and incremental steps. You start with an extreme offer,
Okay.
about 65% of your target price,
Go.
and then make 3 incremental increases
All right.
until you reach your final offer, which is 100% of your target.
Wow, that initial offer sounds incredibly low.
It does.
Wouldn't that risk like insulting the other person and making them walk away?
It might seem counterintuitive,
Right.
but remember, we're playing the long game here.
Okay.
That initial low offer, delivered with the right tone, actually sets a psychological anchor, making your subsequent offers seem more reasonable.
So it's like we're setting a low bar
Yeah.
that we gradually raise.
Right.
Making them feel like they're getting a better deal each step of the way.
Exactly.
Layered.
And the key is to deliver those offers with that calm, confident, late-night FM DJ voice we talked about earlier.
Okay.
No hint of aggression or desperation.
Right.
Just calm, collected logic.
So we make that initial low ball offer.
Yes.
What happens next? Do we just wait for their counter?
Not quite.
Okay.
After each offer, you deploy those calibrated questions we've been talking about.
Right.
Phrases like, how am I supposed to do that? Or what would it take to make this work?
Okay.
Gently nudge them to engage.
Right.
Explain their reasoning.
Okay.
Reveal more information.
So it's constant dance of offering,
Yes.
questioning,
Right.
listening, and gathering intel,
Exactly.
allowing us to adjust our strategy as we go.
Yeah.
And if their counteroffers are still miles away from our target,
Yeah.
we just say no
Right.
in a way that keeps the door open.
Exactly. Like,
Right.
your offer is very generous, but I'm sorry, that just doesn't work for me right now.
It's like that delicate art of saying no without slamming the door shut.
Yeah.
It's being firm yet respectful,
Right.
acknowledging their offer while holding our ground.
And remember, each no brings you one step closer to a yes. It's a process of elimination,
Okay.
narrowing the gap,
Right.
finding that sweet spot where both parties feel like they've achieved a win.
This is so helpful.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. Negotiations can get heated.
Oh, yeah.
What happens when the other person starts using aggressive tactics or throws like an emotional curveball?
That's when you unleash the power of labeling,
Right.
like we discussed earlier.
Okay.
Instead of reacting defensively,
Right.
you acknowledge their emotions like, it seems like you're feeling frustrated.
Okay.
It instantly disarms them
Yeah.
and shows them you're listening, not attacking.
It's like acknowledging the elephant in the room,
Exactly.
and suddenly it's not so scary anymore.
You're diffusing the emotional charge
Right.
and creating space for a more rational conversation.
And once we've acknowledged their feelings,
Yeah.
we can steer the conversation back to the issue at hand,
Yes.
using those trusty calibrated questions.
Precisely. It all circles back to that crucial element of understanding the other person's worldview, their motivations, their values.
Voss calls it understanding their religion.
Right. It's about figuring out what truly matters to them.
Back.
Is it money, security,
Okay.
status, fairness? Once you understand their driving force,
Right.
you can frame your offers in a way that resonates with their core values.
It reminds me of that story about the farmer threatening to blow up the National Mall.
Yeah.
It was by understanding his religious beliefs,
Right.
his deep-seated motivations, that negotiators were able to find that common ground and diffuse the situation.
It's a powerful reminder that those black swans, those crucial pieces of information, can be hiding in plain sight.
Right.
We just need to know how to look for them.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've unpacked so much valuable information, from never split the difference, from the surprising power of no, to the art of bending reality and uncovering those hidden black swans.
It feels like we've been given this whole new set of tools to navigate the world.
And the best part is these techniques aren't just for boardrooms and contract negotiations.
No, not at all.
They're applicable to every aspect of our lives.
Exactly.
From negotiating with our kids to navigating tricky conversations at work, these principles can help us achieve better outcomes and build stronger relationships.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I know I'm going to be putting these techniques to good use.
Me too.
And here's a final thought for our listeners.
Okay.
Think back to a recent conversation where you felt stuck, where you felt like you had no leverage. How could you have used these techniques, these subtle yet powerful strategies, to shift the dynamic and achieve a better outcome?
Something to think about.
The answers might surprise you.
They might.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.